Welcome everyone to Civil Procedure, and I want to begin by just thinking a little bit about the honor code hypothetical that I started and that I put in the syllabus and that I gave you to think about for this session. So let me start with you, Jamie, and let's assume for the moment that I, as your professor, think that you violated the George Washington University Honor Code. So I send you a notice one day and I say, you've violated the Honor Code and you're going to get kicked out of school. So what sort of procedure might you want in that kind of a situation? What would you want me to have to do before you have to leave school?
Well, at a minimum, I would want the opportunity to present my side of the case and be able to argue why I shouldn't be expelled.
Okay, so you want to argue, you want to have an opportunity to tell your side of the case. So let's give you that opportunity. So I go to you and I say, I think you violated the honor code. Tell me your side of the case. And you say, I didn't violate the honor code because of this and this and this. And I say, okay, well, now you've had your opportunity to tell your side of the story. I think you're wrong. You're out of school. Is that good?
Well, no. See, I would also want probably an impartial third party who could hear both sides of the story and then make the determination.
An impartial third party. All right, so let's think about that for a second. So first of all, Margot, why should that third party be impartial? What's important about it being impartial, as opposed to, say, someone who knows Jamie and knows that she's honest and honorable on the one hand, or on the other hand knows that she's dishonest and dishonorable? Wouldn't that be better?
Well, you don't want biased knowledge to change the outcome, and you want that person to be able to look at both sides. Your opinion as to why she violated the honor code, and Jamie's reasoning as to why she didn't violate the honor code. And if that person has any outside knowledge of either parties, that could result in an unfair decision.
But why wouldn't it result in a more fair decision? Because the more you know the parties, that is, the more you know Jamie and me, you would know whether I'm the kind of person who, let's say, discriminates against women or has a habit of unfairly accusing people. Or on the other hand, whether you know that Jamie cheated at her last school that she was at or something like that. You could call that bias, but you could also call that knowledge. Why wouldn't you want that in your adjudicator?
Well, because you don't want to have an assumption that someone is guilty of cheating or guilty of falsely accusing their students right off the bat. Because maybe Jamie cheated at her previous school, but maybe she didn't cheat this time, and you really are accusing her without any evidence. So a third party that has that kind of prior knowledge about Jamie wouldn't even bother with hearing her story and try to make some determination with the facts and really get to the bottom of what happened. They would just make their decision on any prior understanding of the situation they have, and I don't see that being very fair.
So we do have this sense that a neutral arbiter would be relevant, and so I'm writing that down here. But it is worth noticing that there are some legal systems where that isn't the way you would do it. You would actually summon the village elders, and you would actually value people who knew the various people who were involved in the litigation and knew their families and knew their history and knew how honorable they were and so forth. And so the idea that you would have your case determined by someone who knows nothing about the parties or the incident is not necessarily the only way you could do an adjudicatory process. So we shouldn't necessarily assume that. Dennis, I see you've raised your hand. You have something to say?
I have a question. We're presuming that what we want is a fair outcome. We all have an understanding of what that is. Are there some systems, however, where there might be another goal? For example, the goal might be that we don't want anyone to ever question what the teacher says. And so we don't really care if there's a balance, if there's a fairness. We just want to have the institution be beyond reproach.
Yeah, so one of the things you might say is that you might not think that the greatest value was to determine the truth of whether Jamie did the thing or not, right? So we're assuming, we sort of started from the assumption that we want to find out the truth. But you could imagine that you might have other values in mind. For instance, obedience to authority, or order, or respect for teachers, or respect for institutions, or things like that. We could also turn it around the other way. So, Matt, let's assume for a minute that you knew that Jamie had actually done the thing.
She did.
And that she was, she had actually violated the honor code. If the point of whatever procedural system we're going to create is to find out the truth, maybe we don't need the opportunity to be heard, or maybe we don't need a neutral arbiter, or maybe we don't need whatever other things you might add to that, because if we're just trying to find out the truth, we already know the truth. What would you say to that?
Yeah, but how do you know I'm going to tell the truth? Maybe I have a grudge against Jamie, and I just want to take her out at the opportunity.
So you might think that actually talking to someone else might not get you the truth, but let's assume that you, forgetting about whether I believed you, let's assume you as yourself know that Jamie did the thing. Do you think that Jamie needs to have any of the procedures we might set up, or do you think that we could bypass them?
I mean, maybe I don't know the full story. Maybe I only know part of it. And so even though I think I'm telling the full truth, there's another piece to be heard.
Okay, so you might say, look, you might think you know something, but you may not know extenuating circumstances, you may not know the context, and so you may not really know the truth of the incident. So Shireen, could you make an argument that even if you knew the full truth, you might still want Jamie to have procedures?
Yes. I think it's important to still have the procedure. I think the goal, it's good to have the goal of telling the truth and to find the truth of the matter, but you still need the proper procedure in place because you don't know why she did it or kind of what are the circumstances surrounding it, and it gives a full picture of the incident.
Okay, so you might want to still have a set of procedures because you want a fuller picture of the incident. Anyone else have any other reasons why you might want to have more procedure even in that situation? Margot.
I try to raise my hand on
the
click button. I don't know if it works, but
it does.
I just know, even though I know that Jamie actually did it, I would like for her to have a fair procedure because in case it happens to me next semester, I would like those procedures to be established and have the opportunity myself to defend my circumstances.
So you might want to set up a procedural system that was operating the same way each time because even though this might be an easy case, you might want to set up procedures that would operate in other cases as well. Camille.
I'm also thinking, too, any backlash that Jamie might have if she, let's say she knew she did it, but she might feel like she was unjustly treated, so she might actually kind of pursue her own path. And I think that having a civil procedure would allow her that peace of conscience that she was able to be represented.
So you might want people to feel as if they were subject to fair procedures. Okay, so we have these various procedures that we might want to create. We have this idea that we would have a neutral arbiter, and we have an idea that there has to be an opportunity to be heard. We have an idea that there needs to be evidence. When we decided that there needed to be a neutral arbiter, it's not just one neutral arbiter, but it sounds like it's a panel of people so that we could have a student, a faculty member, an administrator, something like that. In determining evidence, we might need to have witnesses and so forth. What if the neutral arbiters decide against Jamie? Is that the end of the line, or do you want Jamie to have somewhere else to go? Iris, any thoughts about that?
Well, I would think that Jamie, if that happens, then there must be an appeal process. Maybe the evidence wasn't complete, or maybe the, maybe she didn't fully state her case. So, I mean, there should be a chance for her to resupply some of the some additional witness or some other cases for her.
Okay, so we might want to have some additional appeal and some more people involved. Recognize, though, that at this point we've now involved a lot of people and it's taken a lot of time. So how much time would you give Jamie to prepare her case, Matt? What kind of time do you think is fair?
For the second time or the first time?
Either.
Probably less the second time than the first time, since she's already gathered all the theoretical evidence she would need. But I don't know, case dependent.
Okay, so it might be at least a few weeks, right?
But it's not. Why are you assuming that it has to be represented? I mean, one way of appealing would be take the same evidence and give it to a higher level of adjudicators. For example, the president of the university.
Right, but you'd have to at least give time up front for Jamie to present the case originally, and then there would at least have to be some time to send it to whoever is going to be the appellate body, maybe it's the president, and an explanation as to what you think the neutral arbiter got wrong the first time. It would have to be something like that. Now, I'm a law professor. Jamie is just a law student. And so you might also think that she needs, or she should have the opportunity to hire a lawyer, so that the fact that I might be a better arguer or more skilled at understanding the legal regime doesn't necessarily overwhelm what the facts of the issue are. And so we might also want a lawyer, and then we have the problem that Jamie might not have enough money to hire a lawyer, and then we might ask whether the school needs to hire a lawyer for her, and so forth. And so what we need to recognize is that each of these layers of procedure that we might add to this process adds to the cost, both in terms of people's time and in terms of the literal amount of money that the law school might have to expend. And of course, every dollar that we're spending on having the neutral arbiter and having the lawyer and all of the time that faculty members are spending on it is time that they're not spending working with students, mentoring students, getting students jobs, things like that. And every dollar we spend hiring Jamie a lawyer is money that's not going to scholarship funds, it's not going to clinics, it's not going to whatever else we might think is good for students. So it's important to see that all of these layers of procedure adds to the cost. All right, so we now have this whole procedure, and we think that it might be important to have the procedure both because we want to have kind of some sort of truth-seeking function, but also because we want to demonstrate fairness in some way to the world. So let me ask one last question now. What if this process goes on for, I don't know, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, what should happen with Jamie in the meantime? Should she be allowed to go to class, or should she not be allowed to go to class? What do you think about that? Let me ask you, Matt.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Why?
Because there's not a huge downside for letting her stick around in the meantime, whereas there's more negative consequences if we got it wrong.
So one of the things we might look at is we might say, well, you know, assuming I'm wrong, what are the consequences of keeping her out of class for 6 weeks? Well, the big consequence is she's then way behind, and she probably has to give up a whole year of her life and re-enroll in law school and so forth, or at least a semester. And so there's more of a consequence there. On the other hand, if she ends up needing to be kicked out of school because she violated the honor code, there's not a huge harm from letting her have 6 weeks more of legal knowledge, I guess, although maybe it would be distasteful to students to have to sit next to a horrible honor code violator or something like that.